All right, we are live. Ooh,
Can you see me?
we are live, and we are live, and
This should be live.
okay, connecting. We are on. Welcome, my friend. Welcome, welcome,
Thank
welcome.
you.
Nice to see you.
Big episode.
Even though I've seen you 15 times today. It's nice to see you in front of a crowd. Hello, everyone. We're on a little bit earlier to give people a bit of time to jump on. I've been noticing a whole heap of people joining the Facebook group today, which is excellent. And I think, Frank, the reason why people are joining the Facebook group today is because we are unpacking a very, very, very special client's portfolio who has purchased 5 properties in 4 years and now is going for property number 6 in his 5th year of working with us, which sounds awesome.
A bit of a story as well. I think he's definitely has gone around the ringer and come out on the other side pretty well. And I guess it may relate with some people starting off. And Anthony was, I forget how old he was when he comes to us, 26, 27. Can't remember. It's been a while now, but
26, 27.
and now he's developed. I think the cool thing, what's has happened is, I think, well, I'll share it towards the end. I think it's the more of the, not so much the property side of things. I think as what's happened to him as a person, which we'll touch on during the call.
Absolutely. Not to mention the portfolio has, like, anyone to achieve 5 properties before the age of 30, I think is really, really special. Really, really special on his own. And there's been some things that have gone his way, and his income has increased. But let's not forget where he came. He came to us at 26. He was on $75,000 cleaning graffiti at night, and he's turned that into a multi-million-dollar portfolio. And he will continue on. He'll purchase his 6th property. I mean, really, he could go now for his 6th, but we're deciding to hold off until about January next year. So 6 resi properties by 30 years old. Pretty cool.
Massive achievement. And anyone can do it. Anyone can do it as well. So absolutely. I think that's the belief there. And some people may think it's not possible. Some people think, yeah, what are they hiding? Literally not hiding anything. The only thing I guess we can say is that, of course, Anthony has had a wage increase.
Yep.
As he's gone along this journey after his 2nd property, which did help, of course. So, of course, there is that there played a massive role of him being able to, to expand to where he is today. But we'll touch on that as we go along.
Yep. And I mean, we could probably even, if you want to think that we are hiding something, we could say there's probably been a bit of luck to this as well, in the sense of he got in at the right time and he stuck to a plan. But I don't really look at that as luck. He got into a market and then he could buy properties at 300 grand. It's probably not the case anymore. You cannot do that in Australia. But that's not luck. I think the harder you work, the longer you stick to a plan, and the more you trust and follow research, the luckier you get. But anyway, let's get into it. Let's get into Mr. Anthony, one of our first ever clients at Fresh Start, and his entire portfolio journey. So for anyone watching who's just come on, we will kick it off. Anthony, not even 30. He's purchased 5 properties. He will purchase his 6th property with Fresh Start Advisory in next year, start of next year. So 6 properties by the age of 30. He came to us as a 26-year-old on a $75,000 income. We talked him out of buying a $650,000 home for his first ever property. We purchased another property. He followed the Fresh Start strategy, and let's show you what he's achieved in the last 4 years. Let's get into it. First property. Talk to me.
So P1, we bought this in Rockhampton, okay, for $275,000, a 3x1x1, beautiful home, side access, over 800 square meters of land, granny flat potential, one of the top streets as well, a suburb called Frenchville, And geez, what a time we were buying property back then. I remember how buying properties for 250, 270. I think I brought my brother for a property in the same suburb for the same price as well. So the good old days. And now that property has done pretty well since then.
Love it. Where is it today, Mr. Frank?
Today, valued at 550. Okay, so literally 100% growth in 37 months. Renting out for 480, which is a 9% rental yield from purchase price. When he first got the property, he was renting out for 360, so it's jumped up a lot since then. And at the end, I got a bit of a surprise and a bit of I guess, something to talk about at the end of what's going to happen as well for his whole portfolio, which is going to be pretty cool. But yeah, this property basically is breaking even for him, but it was the catalyst to get him into the property number 3 as well. So we took equity out of this property and got into number 3 for him, and it's been a great investment for him.
Awesome. I just want to highlight 2 things here, which I think is pretty easy to miss. One, his property's doubled in 4 years, which obviously that's not too hard to miss. But I think probably the more, or equally as important, not more important, actually probably not even equally as important, I think important, this property is now washing its own face. So within 3 or 4 years, let's say, this property's taking care of itself. So everyone talks about rental yield and getting a 7% rental yield straight off the bat. Super important. It is very important. But remember, even if you achieve a 5%, 5.5% rental yield when you purchase the property, it will become a 9% rental yield very, very shortly if you're obviously in a very, very strong rental market. So pretty cracking deal. He's doubled his value of this, and the property's now managing and taking care of itself, which is just magnificent. So I love it. All right. When did he go for property number 2, Frank? And talk to me about property number 2.
Pretty quick after that, a few months. We purchased this one here for $351,000, 600 square meters, 3 bedroom, 1 bath, 1 car garage. We purchased this one in Bundaberg, okay, which is probably one of the best performing regions in Queensland. Love Bundaberg. You've got a property there yourself as well, Age. And yeah,
Rocky as well. Sorry to cut you
and
off.
Rocky as well. Yep. And so, this has done extremely well for him. The rents have gone up pretty significantly in this area, and I guess the growth as well. So take it to $514,000. And this is, of course, if you look 46% growth since then. And if you look at its $520 a week in rent, which is a 7.6% rental yield, this property here, I do believe it is worth more than that. Looking at comparables, because this is bank values that were going off as well. Yep. If we had to sell this property, I reckon it's close towards the top end of the 500. But yeah, a great market in a suburb called Kep. What's that? No, sorry. What's that? Sorry.
Close to 6. Is that what you're saying?
Close to the 6. Yeah. So to top end of the 580, I reckon, roughly around there.
Yep.
The property's in a suburb called Kepnock as well. So if people want to look at where it is, at Kepnock. So great area also.
Awesome. So if you say closer to 6, I mean, really, what's that? 55, 60% growth in the second property, 100% in the first. Cool. We're tracking okay. Third property, when did that come and what shifted? Because obviously Anthony came to us with the borrowing capacity of, I'm talking about right at the start. What did he come to us with the borrowing capacity of?
I think he had about 600 or just around the 600K. But back then, of course, interest rates were at, 2% back in those days. So it was a lot different. Then Anthony decided to change, or he changed that, was in the, midst of changing roles. And so there was a big gap. I think it was like a year and a bit. So he couldn't do anything. And so then we had the opportunity because he got a new role and, it was a good pay increase, of course, a significant one, which helped a lot. And then he got this one here for $310,000 in WA, another town called Geraldton, which I think was spoken about. This is a 4x1x1. I think it's 800 squares as well. It does have the granny flat potential on the left-hand side where that blue gate is. That's his part of his land. And it's just this big block that's just sitting there, which we can add a granny flat and add another, dwelling on the back of that property. So P1 and P3, we can add a granny flat on, which has opportunity too. This property is actually renting out pretty well. I will say when we purchased this property on the right time in Geraldton, and we're already purchasing Geraldton already for, I reckon, a good five or 6 months prior as well. But in this suburb here, as soon as we purchased, I reckon this property here, like maybe a month later, it just skyrocketed. I reckon it jumped nearly 100 grand in value of what these properties were selling for. So we've got the val here, but this val is very conservative from the bank, and I know probably what it's worth if we had to resell it. But if you want to go to your next,
just before that, I just want to two things I want to highlight: the granny flat potential, what that does. Maybe you don't have to answer that now. We'll go through his portfolio. The granny flat potential, what that actually means, and why that's important. And then two, where was his income for him to be able to borrow more? You might not know off the top of your head, but he was obviously on 75K income, purchased his first two properties, used up his 600K borrowing capacity, right? He was at a standstill. Do you know roughly what his borrowing or what his borrowing capacity was at for the third purchase and what his income was at?
So third purchase, I think it's gone up to, that's a good question. I think it was around that 800K mark. Okay. And mind you as well, this is where, we, at that point in time, there was a few things going on as well from a structure point of view here with his portfolio too. So that was, of course, making it a little bit easier for him to get more access to borrowing capacity as well. So this is where his income did jump up. And of course, I'm not going to say how much he is earning, but it jumped up a significant amount. Of course, then his borrowing capacity jumped up a significant amount. By that time as well, he had a lot of equity they could use. And this one here now today is valued at 444. But I know for a fact it's in a suburb called Wagakine. And I know for a fact probably this would sell for close towards the fives as well. Okay. But as you can see here, the rental yield it's only been 5 months since he's owned this property from day one. That's why I say we got in at the perfect time. The rental yield is 8.5% today. And literally, it's already had a 43% capital growth. So we got in at the right time, cracking deal. Property, of course, that's just a plain Jane property, nothing flash. But as you can see here, we got this at the perfect time. So timing is everything, of course. I guess when you can afford to get a property, you go get a property. But I think with Anthony, he just went. He listened to us, bang, 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 and took our advice. Some of these properties, of course, you're seeing the picture of what it looks like outside. Internally, some of them aren't even flash. Like his first property, it's very old and dated inside. Which it could do for renovation. This property here, it's probably like 20 something years old. So it's not like brand new inside. And even the second property, it's the same thing. It's not like brand new inside. So these are properties that, of course, not brand new properties that are 10 years old. They're properties that are, some of them up. The first one, I think it's 40 years old. So yeah.
Yeah, love it. And again, surprise, surprise, I've also got a property in this region as well. So all first three properties that Anthony has properties in, I've also got properties, if not in the same suburb, the same region, which is pretty cool to see. All right, cool. We got a question here, Frank. I've already responded to it, to Mr. Gonzalo. Do you need a permit for a granny flat? It's just very much dependent on the state. Is that correct?
If soon as you go from 1 to 2, you will, and depending on the state. So for 1 granny flat, depending on the state, you don't. For 2, you will. Yeah, and I guess the benefit of a granny flat is you don't get hit with extra rates and water levy fees and all these sort of things. So the return on investment is much higher compared to if you were to, say, subdivide the block and build a townhouse or unit at the back. There's more costs involved, subdivisions and things like that, and then you're going to hit with rates more. So they're quite a crafty little way to increase your rental income.
Yeah, and just for everyone listening, you could build a granny flat for 150 to 250, sometimes 300. And, the rent on that, a lot of the times obviously depending on the region, $400, $450. So really, really, really strong yielding little side assets, which can, turn your property from a negative to positive pretty quickly, just from a cash position, which is awesome. Property 4, talk to me.
So this property here, we've gone back into Queensland. Okay. because of course, once again, we're trying to conserve his borrowing capacity. That's why we purchasing these properties at a affordable price. 320 we purchased his house for. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage on a just under 600 square meter block. Okay, and we bought this one in the Whitsundays region. Okay, a market that probably I don't think there's many other people out there buying in, and it's done extremely well. Good rental return, and I purchased a property here for my brother also. So it's a market that we've invested for our family or ourselves as well. And then as you can see here, in the space of 5 months, 18% growth. Okay, and the rental yield from day one is 7.8%.
It's madness. That's crazy.
So,
That's awesome. I love it. And very clean. Looks like a newer property, hey?
yes, it does have depreciation. It's a newer type of property. It's like a little estate there. It's got depreciation and a whole bunch of other things as well. Like it does have a bit of this one here's got a body corp on it. It's not that expensive, but it's because it does have like a swimming pool for the whole estate. It's gated and things like that. It's got a barbecue area, parks, and a few things like that. So this property here does get that extra bit more rent and of course attraction because there's not many estates like this in general in Australia. So, which is pretty cool.
Cool. And that's in Bowen, is that correct?
Yes, in Bowen.
There you go, Simone. Property number 5. When did he buy this one and what happened?
So number 5 was this year.
Gotcha.
We paid $385. This property here is a high set Queenslander, 3-bedroom, 1-bath, 2-car garage. Okay, and we purchased this one in Gladstone. Okay, so for people that know, Gladstone is a big regional town in Queensland, just above Bundaberg, below Rockhampton. So on the same trajectory of the coast there. And yeah, this property's done quite well. We've snagged this for a great price. I'll be honest, I don't know how we got it for a good price at this time. I think Austin got this one off market because I think I was buying at the same time, and my property I paid about $450. And if I seen this, I probably would have picked this up, to be honest. But somehow Anthony is very gifted. For people that don't know who he is, I think he's blessed. Some of the stories of winning money and things that I've heard from him just sometimes blows my mind because he's literally, he's done some funny things and crazy things.
Yeah, it is. And he bought this property this year, and the property has had, I don't reckon that's correct, but there you go. 3% in 3 months. It's probably not correct, but that's okay.
Well, that's off a bank val. It's this property is under rented, but anyway, it's still getting good yield, 5.3. If you compare it to his other properties, it's not doing quite well. All of them are like 7, 8, 9, 10% nearly, so there is a lot to come. With this, he is very heavily based in Queensland with his portfolio. At the time, it was just that these are the best markets for growth, and that's why we targeted these certain areas, of course. And of course, affordability at those times is what we had to go into certain areas to purchase in. So if we had the opportunity, we could spend more. There would have been more diversification in other parts around Australia. But as well, we look at the opportunity for growth and the purchase price and what we're looking for. These were the best quality regions that we found for him.
I love it. Not a question here from Simone. Not worried about the volatility of Gladdy, which Frank, I'm sure you've answered this question many a times.
Yeah, so look, I think it's a good question. People get scared of what's happened in the past, but past performance doesn't equal future performance. Things can change and do change. Governments do things, and the region does do things to make sure that things that happened in the past don't happen again. No one ever wants that to happen to again. So since then, Gladstone has had a big shift in the market from a tourism perspective, retail trade, the educational sector. There's two universities in there as well. There's 5 industries that are driving the economy, and it's changed a lot. And if you look at some of the other sectors, when you compare it to like your manufacturing and sector, that's probably the main dominator in Gladstone, which when it comes down to some of the things that they're doing there, the aluminum plant and stuff like that, that has changed a lot as well. So construction has picked up a lot also. So I look at these things, and this is a positive when we look at these type of markets, and the GRPs has been increasing, and these things have changed a lot. Internal migration is very big as well, and the pipeline of projects is very diverse. Over $15 billion getting spent in the whole region, and that's compared to when it happened last time, where the boom increased and then property market went down. There was just literally one sector that they pumped their money into, and that was that sector of the manufacturing / mining sector. And when they pulled the pin on that project and that company took off, there was a whole bunch of properties that were getting built at the time, and then there was an oversupply of property. And what happened? The property market did go down. But since then, there's a lot of things that have changed. There's been a lot of school upgrades in the region, so like things have changed a lot since then.
Yeah, and I think a really good point as well, to just add here right now, not more maybe a shameless plug. We've picked 5 crackers, so we've picked all of the properties at the perfect time, and obviously that's all based on research. Something also Fresh Start Advisory does is every single 4 months we review a client's portfolio, and we sit down with Anthony and we look at the data, we look at what's going on in these regions. Now, what does that mean from a risk point of view, or what does that mean to you right then, Simone, that you've just asked that question? Well, if things do start shifting in the market, a property market does not shift within a month or 2 months. It takes 3 months, 6 months, 12 months for a market to shift. There needs to be a whole bunch of things that change in order for it to go like this and then it to go down, right? So the way that we mitigate risk for our clients is, one, some of these properties we will sell. Okay, that's the first thing. And we also, like, Anthony has a team behind him reviewing his portfolio throughout the entire journey. So if things are starting to shift, it's pretty cool knowing that, you know, his entire portfolio is essentially being reviewed by us. And we're able to get into a market right at the bottom, get out of a market right at the top, which I think is like very hard to do if you haven't got your finger on the pulse. Obviously very hard to do if you haven't got a 15-person team, which Fresh Start Advisory does have. But yeah, it's definitely a way to mitigate risk, and people can do that on their own as well if they have the ability and the time. So, okay, cool. Well, that's his 5.
Well, I might jump in there if Simone's still there as well. I know she can't I can't see her in the comments there, but we do have a podcast which I talk about comparing a capital city town, because people think capital cities, there's no volatility.
Yep.
Okay. And we get a town like Townsville, and Townsville's got a bad rap, and we compare it over 20 years and what outperforms a market. And that podcast there, I break it down. I get data. I get comparables. I get a property that sold in 2002 from a capital city in Melbourne. That's a place called Coburg, which is my hometown, which I was born in, for 8 Ks from the Melbourne CBD. Then we get a property in Townsville that's offered back in 2002. Compare it to, you know, today, and we look at what they've grown by a percentage, okay, and by from a capital growth percentage, and as well from a rental perspective. And you'll be very surprised when you hold property for long term that it will outperform some regional towns. There's a lot of regional towns that will outperform Melbourne and Sydney, or capital cities, in the market if long term. So, which is pretty crazy. But anyway, I think that's I guess if you go on our podcast, that's a little plug in, and we talk about that there.
Yep. Awesome. She's here. She's listening. Glad over Rocky, but I get beaten down for rooting for Gladdy. Well, I appreciate it. And again, like, something needs to shift. Frank has a property in Gladdy. Frank's purchased hundreds of properties. There's been a reason why Frank decided to put his money in Gladdy, right? And again, a lot of these markets we could be getting out of within the next 4 or 5 years. His property, I mean, Gladdy as a whole, I think grew by 10% last quarter. A lot of these properties will literally be worth double within a 5-year period. So that gives you ability. All right, Frank, enough yapping. What's next for Anthony?
What's next? So at the moment, going off his whole property portfolio, available equity, just shy of $200,000. So $187,000 of equity available to tap into to get into the next property, or multiple, divide that up and get multiple properties if we can, depending on the borrowing capacity as well. So that's what we're waiting and loading up for next year, which is pretty cool. Now, the big thing here is not so much the equity I want to talk about. I want to talk about the rental increases that we're seeing on all these properties. Okay. So I'll get into it. P1,
Please.
renting out, that's going to be going up to about $80 a week. Okay.
So what's it at?
I'll go back to I've written down how much the increases are, but if you go back to P1,
Awesome. Yep.
that's going up $80 a week from 480.
560.
P2, yep. P2,
Yep.
we're going to be looking at, this one's going up to 580.
$60.
Okay.
140.
Then P3, $55. Oh, sorry, $550. So $40, or $40 increase.
180.
And then P4, this one's jumping up a fair bit. This is going up to 560.
240.
Okay. And then we've got the next one, which is, this one's going up to 470. Okay. And that's all next year in from January to April. That's all happening for all those properties there. So
I don't know if we can see this. Anyone here?
Yep. $16,000 increase.
My calculator works. That's good.
So Anthony does have, of course, it's not, these properties aren't all positive cash flow and he's making, bank and there's, 30 grand, 40 grand coming in. That's not the case. Okay. He's negative, but this $16,000 or plus that's coming in, that's going to open up his borrowing capacity a lot. Okay. So banks are going to look at that. They're going to take in that consideration, and that's going to play a big part on expanding his property portfolio. Some of these properties from those increases are going to be cash flow positive. Some will be neutral. Some will still be negative, but not as negative because he has drawn down equity from them, as well. But that's a massive increase of what we're seeing. Okay. And so, like you said at the beginning, getting a property at 5% or 6% yield, and people go, we want a higher yield. These days, it's very difficult. As you can see, his last property is like a 5-point-something%. But over time, they're going to be increasing year after year in these markets where there's high demand. You can get capital growth and you can get rental growth at the same time. Okay. And so the growth of the rents is probably one of the most important parts where people get stuck, because if you can, imagine you getting a 16K increase every year. Okay. Some people can't get that. They get a 3% increase. It's not much, but 16K increase, that's a massive percentage of increase of income on the portfolio. And that's allowing him to go again. And that's why we have to wait. And that's why, there's a few things that we're doing for next year.
Yeah. Yeah. And on top of this, right, like over the next couple of years, Anthony's got a goal to get to 10 properties, which I think is awesome. How are we going to get more income, right? 1 and 3, properties 1 and 3, we will add a granny flat to that, right? Rather than going and purchasing, we'll go add granny flats. As we also said, very likely to sell some of these assets, either sell them and reinvest them into other resi properties, or most likely put them into commercial properties, which drive a lot of cash flow for us. But yeah, ultimately get him to the goal of having enough income that he replaces his income. So he will get there because he's just goes at it and he's hungry and he listens and he just follows our lead. So it's pretty cool.
I think the last thing I wanted to talk about at the beginning, I said there's something I wanted to really talk about, Anthony, and that's the mindset shift that I guess I can probably say we had a bit of an influence on him, because we, every client signs up, we give him a book to read, and we gave him a book. He read the book. I gave him another book to read. He read that. I gave him some of my books, and he read and he just listened. And Anthony was probably our second client. So he listened, he took on the advice, and he grew from it. He got a job, and he literally he's pretty much doubled his income. He's, changed as a man, and he's done all these things. He's learns about property. He's done a whole bunch of other things and personal development stuff. So, it's pretty cool to see with the shift, because of course to go down that road and still do the same things, of course, that it would have he would have been stuck probably at the 2 properties. Maybe he would have got the 3. But then, of course, that's changed him as a person, and he's seen and he grew from that, and he's continued his journey. So, which is pretty cool to see. And there's been a fair few other clients that have gone through that journey as well, which is nice to see.
Yeah, and I think maybe one last thing just to wrap up today's session, because it means something to us. What Anthony's done is simple. He's listened and he's followed our lead, and he's backed the research that we've put together. It sounds really easy to do. It's actually hard to do that. It's actually really, really hard to do that, right? Like, I would say that the vast majority of our clients are not actually able to do that, right? Maybe 70% of our clients are not able to just go go for it. Now, he doesn't put his hand over his eye and go blindly, but when we've said, Anthony, it's time, he's gone. And those decisions have literally made him millions and millions of dollars. So what might seem really, really simple, it's not that simple, right? Like we go to a doctor, the doctor tells us to do something, we have to do our own research and we have to look at it and question it and do that. We go to a lawyer, do the same thing. We go to a advisor, it's all the same thing. I think what Anthony's skill and mindset, and I think why he is where he is and why he'll buy another 5-6 properties over the next 5 years is because he's able to just accept what has been said. He's paying a professional and he just gets it done. So I think Anthony definitely needs to take some credit for getting to where he is, of course.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I hope, may I ask what his income is? His income, I don't know if we're able to answer that, Frank.
No,
Maybe not.
I can't answer that. I'm sorry. But I guess that's personal information. But
yeah, we probably can't answer it.
But yeah, he's done quite well. Let's just say his income from where he started to now it has increased, and of course he's done well, and he deserves it, I guess, as well for shopping around and not shopping around. I guess in growing and learning and wanting to do better. So, but it all started.
I won't say what his income is. Sorry, Frank, to cut you off. I won't say what his income is, but I can say that it's. Yeah, I can say what it's not. Yes, I can do that. That's fine. Just because I don't want people to think that they can't achieve this. It's not above $200,000. Okay, so it's not like he's on a $500,000. He's not even at $200,000. So
he's below the highest tax bracket. Let's just say that the highest tax bracket, 180, is below. Yes. He's below that. So and for some people that might be a big reach. Some people might be listening here. They're 60 grand. They're on 60, 70, 80 grand, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with we've got a lot of clients like that as well. But of course, as you progress and go along the journey, your property will help you as well progress as the rents, as you can see for Anthony's properties, they've gone up. That adds on to his income, and that will help out, the individual or the person investing in property as well. So it is all achievable. If I'm not sure who asked that question. I don't know how old they are, but if you're 20, 30, 40, years old, even 50, you got so many years left in you to invest as well. So a lot of things can happen in 10, 20, 30, 40 years. So don't be too disheartened and think, oh my God, I don't earn that much. I'm not going to get there. You will get there.
Yep, absolutely. And then old mate Gonzalo said, let's get to 10 boys. We're there with you, mate. And we're ready to do one of these webinars for you and your portfolio soon. But Frank, thank you for making this very, very easy for myself. I'm just the person behind it asking the questions. Guys, thank you for everyone staying on. We've had a good group and a good bunch of questions, so I appreciate it. And I think the biggest one is for Anthony. Congratulations on building a portfolio. Congratulations on building a bulletproof mindset. And congratulations on following a lead, which is freshed up and letting us be a part of it. So thank you very much, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone. Thank you to Anthony. And thank you for the questions as well.
Take care, guys.
See you guys.